So this week, I want to talk about fish math, and specifically, I wanted to talk about the math of ambitious and modest lure. But in order to do that, I have to also explain how the math of fishing holes work. And so, if you're afraid of math, please don't run away. I promise I am going to do my best to make this super duper easy to understand. So let's, bear with me on this one. It's going to be very visual, so this one you will be able to watch. But let's get started. Every fishing hole has what is basically called a weighted table associated with it. A weighted table is a list of fish. In this particular case, it would be fish. And each of those fish have something called a weight. This weight is a single value that determines how likely a fish is going to bite. Now, whenever you cast out, it looks at that weighted table and it sees what the total number of weights is. It starts adding up all those numbers, and then it picks whichever fish it is. That we're not going to get into. The important part is smaller numbers means less likely to bite. So in this example fishing hole of 4 fish that I have, we have 2 fish that are weights of 10 and 2 fish that are weights of 25 and 50 for a total of 75. So at any point when you cast out, the percentage is going to be based on those weights, and that is determined by adding up all of these numbers. So 10 plus 10 plus 25 plus 50 is 95. And then the percent chance of any one of those fish biting is just its weight divided by the sum of all the weights, or all of those weights added up. So that's where that 95 comes from. Following me so far? This ends up being like around, I think, like 10.5% or something like that. But these weights are how the lures do their work, basically. So I undo all this. Let's go back and look at how the lures work. Ambitious and modest lure both increase the bite chance, or the weights, of fish associated with their hook set, and they do so on a very specific set of multipliers that the community was able to determine over a bunch of testing. I'm going to start with modest lure because modest lure impacts precision hook set fish. And whenever you have one stack of modest lure and ambitious lure, but we're going to just focus on the modest lure math here. Whenever you have one stack, all the weights of the precision hook set fish, so these guys right here, they all get multiplied by 1.5. Okay? 2 stacks, they're multiplied by 3. And at 3 stacks, they get multiplied anywhere between like 5.5 and 6. For the sake of just easier mental math, I'm going to roll with 6, but it's anywhere between 5.5 and 6. I think there's still a little bit up for debate on that one, but I think the math is leaning towards probably 5.5, but again, not 100% conclusive. I'm just going to roll with 6 for now because it's easier to do the math. So, if you are using modest lure and you have one stack, it's going to take the weight and it's going to multiply it by the modifier for one stack, which is 1.5. It's not going to multiply the modifier for the powerful hook set fish because it doesn't impact those at all. It doesn't matter. So these end up becoming new weights of 15 each, while the powerful hook sets still have weights of 25 and 50. So now, if we add this all up, remember that the original bite percent chance for these 10 weight fish were each around 10.5%. If we add this all up now, this becomes 30 plus 25, which is 55, plus 50, which is 105. So now it becomes 15 over 105, which ends up being around 14.2%. Cool. Now it's higher. Now it isn't 1.5 times higher, but it is higher. And this is where I think a lot of people get confused, is that they'll see these numbers, or they assume that it's a flat multiplier. If you look at a fish like, say, furcicata, and it has a bite rate of 6%, that does not mean that at 3 stacks it becomes a 36% chance to bite. It's not how that works. It's based on these weights. If we jump up to the 3 stack math, then we multiply each of these by 6. That becomes weights of 60 compared to the 25 and 50 that we had before. And the sum of this now becomes way bigger. This is now 120 plus 75, or 195. And so 60 over 195 is about 30.7%. So you can see that at 0 stacks, we have a 10.2%. At 1 stack, it's a 14.2%. And then at 3 stacks, you have a 30.7%. It is not direct multipliers whenever you use a lure. It is multiplying those weights specifically. This is why whenever you use lure, it has to recalculate to a new fish, because the entirety of the weights change. You can see if this is 1 stack, and if I erase this bit, this is 3 stacks, you can see that 10 is way lower than 60. And now at 3 stacks, this is 120 versus 75. This is now way more likely to happen than the powerful hook set on 3 stacks compared to the 20 that it was before compared to the 75. Way different. Okay, so one of the other features of the lures is you have a feeling you've attracted a small or large jawed fish. What this does is it means that any fish of the opposing hook set, so if you're using modest lure, any fish that is a powerful hook set fish will not bite. It's not going to bite at all. So what that basically does is, if you see the message saying, you've attracted a small jawed fish, what will happen is the weights of the opposing hook set. So for modest lure, the opposing hook set is going to be powerful hook set, because modest lure impacts precision hook set fish. The weights of those powerful hook set fish will be set to 0, which is whenever you multiply anything by 0, it becomes 0, which means you are guaranteed to get one of the precision hook set fish. One of these guys, no matter what their weights are, they are guaranteed to bite 100%. Now, you get this message on, say, the 1st stack, and then use modest lure a 2nd time, you actually get rid of this. You overwrite the 0, and what ends up happening is instead you go back to whatever the 2nd stack would end up being, so 3. And then the weights go back to what they would have been if that message did not actually ever appear. So this is why it's important that if you ever see this message and you are specifically looking for a fish on that hook set, stop using the lures, period. Because that'll overwrite it if you keep going. What happens if a hidden fish comes in? These are fish that are specifically tied to lure messages, like the Zoger Condor, or like the Clarin Carp, Moon Gripper. What happens to the bite rates when they appear? So if you get a hidden fish message, which could be anything, if you get the message, you are basically now adding an additional fish to whatever hook set that's going to be. So say we're talking about Zoger Condor, which is a powerful hook set fish. You will add that additional fish to the weighted table. It goes from a 0 weight, and as soon as you see the message, it goes to whatever weight it ends up being. We'll just make up a number of, say, 30, just for the sake of arguing. And everything then becomes recalculated based off of that value. So if a fish has a hidden message that appears on the first or second, it's going to be potentially impacted by the stack multipliers. If a hidden fish only appears on the third message, then it's not really going to be impacted by any of this at all, because it's not going to be able to take effect on that multiplier. Does that really matter in the end with the bite rates of the fish? Not really too much. We haven't really seen that really be a problem. Moon Gripper is maybe the one that would come to mind where it could be, but it really isn't. Like you're really more likely to get Moon Gripper than not. But that is how hidden fish come into play. Is if you see the message for the hidden fish, it gets added to the pool. Its weight goes from 0 to whatever it is they assign to it, and then calculations happen based off of that. When you use surface slap, what effectively happens is you set a fish's weight to 0. So say, for example, if you surface slap this fish right here, say slap, it goes from 25 to 0. Now, there's no chance of it biting, and all of the bites are recalculated. So, what was once a 10.2%, with this fish slapped here, we end up seeing the percent chance before any use of lures for either of these fish up here to go to 14.2%. And if you remember, that was roughly the same amount as one stack of the lure. So having surface slap is really powerful to begin with on anything. Effectively, you're going to be raising the chance of a fish to bite before even using the lure, and this is only going to be compounded the more that you actually have the lure. That is basically fish math specifically around how the lures work. I hope this helped give a little bit more clarity on how the lures interact with fishing holes. If you have any questions, please let me know down below. If you liked the idea of talking about fish math, let me know. That's also very helpful. But I hope this helped. Good luck and happy fishing.